What's going on, guys? Welcome into Saw's War. My name is Dustin, and it is a great day to talk about wrestling because this weekend, not only do we have AEW's Forbidden Door happening, but we also had SmackDown end with one of the best segments that the entire Bloodline 2.0 story that has been unfolding after WrestleMania has had. Probably, honestly, the best one. But before we get into all that, bit of a downer to start everything on, but I would be remiss if I did not say rest in peace to Sika Anoa'i, aka Roman Reigns' father, who passed away this week. SmackDown ran an incredible video tribute to him. It's about 3 minutes long, and if you have not seen it, please do yourself a favor and check it out because it is beautifully produced, and it is a wonderful way to honor his legacy in the wrestling industry. And it's a little weird because we also have huge congratulations to Rhea Ripley and Buddy Matthews, who got married this week as well. Rhea has been off TV due to injury. She had to relinquish the women's title on Raw a couple months back. It seems like all signs are pointing to her coming back sooner rather than later. Buddy Matthews was just written off of TV on AEW as well, probably for this. So huge congratulations to the both of them. So before we get into all the predictions and everything for the AEW side of things, just want to run through a couple big things that happened this week in the WWE world. They continue to fire on basically all cylinders across all of their shows. We have Money in the Bank coming up next weekend, so a busy couple weeks here to end the month and to start July off for both AEW and WWE. But Monday Night Raw picked up kind of where people thought it was going to with the Wyatt Sick6, and after their huge debut where they, ostensibly murdered everyone backstage, or it looked like it at least. Chad Gable was competing, which was crazy because WWE has done zombies before, but not quite like this. So Chad Gable was competing, but everyone was wondering what was next. What were they going to do to follow up this huge angle that had all this buzz and all this hype? And I think what they did was a really bold choice, and I think it's proof that they have a pretty strong command of where this all is going to go. So, at one point in the show, Nikki Cross came out and handed Michael Cole a box that had a videotape in it that said, "Play Me," like an old VHS cassette tape. And they ended up a couple segments later playing the contents of it, and it was an interview with Uncle Howdy and Bo Dallas. Now, Bo Dallas is Uncle Howdy, so you had them sitting on a couch talking to each other face to face, and it was a deeply, intense and personal conversation. They were talking about Bray Wyatt's death and how he felt and making people remember, and it was really, really intense, and it kind of raised more questions than it answered, but it was such a perfectly done... It was such a perfectly handled way of broaching that subject. And I think the idea of separating Bo Dallas from Uncle Howdy, however they're going to moving forward, was a really bold choice early on, too. I had heard someone, I can't remember where I heard it, but someone had talked about really wanting to see him own it as far as creatorship and being the figurehead of this story. So I do really think that this was a clear example of that, of him really taking command of this story in making himself that on-screen type of character alongside the Uncle Howdy persona. So, like I said, raised a lot more questions than it answered, but at the end of the day, it was perfectly handled. It was a sensitive subject and topic, and the way they did it was perfect. And it was just enough that it left me extremely intrigued again for whatever is going to come next. We also ended the show with new tag team champions. The Miz and R-Truth, the Awesome Truth, their Raw title reign was longer than I expected, but still not quite as action-packed as I would have wanted. They were mostly used in comedy roles, which is, it's to be expected with, maximizing R-Truth and what he really brings to the table. But still, it's a little disappointing that there weren't more matches because both of those guys are such good wrestlers. But the Judgment Day, back in control, Finn Balor and JD McDonough specifically, with the help of Liv Morgan, who continues to just push the wedge in Judgment Day and drive that story more and more towards their inevitable breakup. That honestly dominated pretty much all of Raw was Wyatt Sick6 and Judgment Day, as well as a couple Money in the Bank qualifiers where we saw Chad Gable beat Bronson Reed and Braun Strowman to punch his ticket to the Money in the Bank ladder match, and Lyra Valkyria won hers versus Kairi Sane and Shayna Baszler. So they continue to book these Money in the Bank matches like beautifully. The people that they're getting into these matches, it is going to be such a good blend. Like you picture, Chad Gable and Carmelo Hayes and, some of the other guys that have been at it already, and you just think about the blending of styles. I think it's setting up to be two extremely memorable Money in the Bank matches. NXT this week, kind of the same. They're building towards Heat Wave, which will take place the day after Money in the Bank, which is kind of interesting since it was usually NXT kind of setting the tone and then, WWE's big show the next night. So they're going to have a lot of pressure to follow up Money in the Bank at this point. And, they've been on such a hot run lately. It's probably going to, come close at least. Like, the matches are shaping up to be, pretty stacked top to bottom. And this show just went towards pushing that more and kind of building that more. There was an incredible Heritage Cup match with Nathan Frazier and Tony D'Angelo. And there was a really fun tag team turmoil to open the show to set the number one contenders for Heat Wave that was eventually won by Chase U with the help of some dastardly tactics from Ridge Holland that continues to just go unnoticed by the rest of the group. They beat the New Catch Republic, Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne at the end eventually, but it was a really fun match. Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate were a part of basically the entire thing, and they're such gifted performers. It was great to see them get that kind of a showcase. I would have kind of liked to see them win because I think they would have, torn the house down with Axiom and Nathan Frazier. And then WWE ended the week with SmackDown, which was, again, another incredible start-to-finish show for them. SmackDown has really hit a strong groove as well. They had taking place in Madison Square Garden, so, they always kind of bring their A-game to those shows. They did something that I would have never predicted, which was they had Jalen Brunson in the crowd, which is, a common occurrence at a lot of these sports towns. There's a lot of wrestling fans in the area. There's a lot of athletes that are wrestling fans. And, he's getting MVP chants when they show him on the Jumbotron, and it's really cool. And then Logan Paul was in one of the Money in the Bank qualifying matches, and he came out with Tyrese Halliburton of the Pacers, who eliminated the New York Knicks in this last year's playoffs. And Tyrese Halliburton is, healing it up and, jawing at Jalen Brunson. And they end up, the triple threat match goes on for the Money in the Bank qualifying. Then afterwards, Tyrese Halliburton and Logan Paul, corner LA Knight. And they're, kind of standing over him. And Jalen Brunson hops the rail and comes sliding into the ring with a steel chair for a good old-fashioned, mid-90s WCW style stand-down. And it was awesome. It was, the perfect line of all of my interests just, converging into one singularity. It was great. It was great to see, and Tyrese Halliburton really played up being the heel. It was clear he was having a blast. I know he's a huge WWE fan anyways, so clearly he was enjoying the opportunity. And all I could think about this whole time watching it was how bad Trae Young fumbled all of this. He was the most hated guy in New York, and now here we are where he is probably, going to get booed every time he goes in, but not this level of villain. He really fumbled this opportunity. That could have been him. We had 3 more wrestlers qualify for the Money in the Bank matches. We had Tiffany Stratton and Naomi on the women's side, LA Knight on the men's side. So again, these matches are looking like they're going to be fantastic. Just a really great blend of skills and styles. And seeing them all in a ladder match is going to be that type of chaos that WWE tends to do better than, most. But the big marquee moment from SmackDown this week will undoubtedly be Paul Heyman, the wise man, refusing to acknowledge Solo Sikoa and getting kicked out of the Bloodline very unceremoniously with a Samoan spike and a huge flying headbutt, which is crazy to see in 2024, followed by a triple powerbomb through the announce table. Now, Paul Heyman is 58 years old. He has not bumped like that in years. So to see him out there getting powerbombed through a table for basically the love of the game and getting the story over is incredible. He looked in the ring like he had not slept, like he had not shaved. He has done things like that before to enhance his look in different angles and moments. So it would not surprise me at all if that was what was going on here. If he just purposely stayed awake to give himself those bloodshot red eyes, not shaved to look disheveled. Just incredible. He is truly a master when it comes to understanding wrestling psychology. He is such an asset to have. And part of the reason why you would never lose faith in the Bloodline storyline, even if it has kind of been a little bit slower to develop since WrestleMania, is because you have him in your back pocket. And he's a masterful storyteller that understands the business as well, if not better, than pretty much anyone else. So I kind of knew that it was going to get to a point where things really started to heat up. But this segment was unbelievable. It was, I think, like 13-14 minutes long to close out the show, and watch every second of it because it unfolded great. It made all of the new Bloodline members look like complete and total threats. Also read that Caesar Sikoa was apparently going to be Jacob Fatu's name, but they decided against it. I hope whoever said, nah, let's just stick with Jacob Fatu, I hope they get a huge raise, because Caesar Sikoa would have been a disaster. That dude, Jacob Fatu, he has it. I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to say aura because it makes me feel old. But he has got it. He is unbelievable. So not calling him Caesar Sikoa is a huge win. But overall, this was a great week for WWE. They, constantly great matches, consistently well booked and well thought out angles and programs for both shows. And everything building towards Money in the Bank is looking like it's going to be another really strong top to bottom card. Like it's next weekend, so we'll get into that next week. Really, the only thing that they did wrong was this handling of Dijak, who announced on Instagram that he had not even been approached to re-sign, and that his contract would be up and he would be leaving the company this week. He taped a match for WWE Speed that aired last week, but before that had not been seen on Raw, I think since the week he was drafted up to Raw from SmackDown. Or I don't think he's been on Raw since he was drafted from NXT again and called up, which is insane because he is an insanely gifted wrestler with a super unique style. And he had legitimately a couple of the best NXT matches this year so far. He has put on some incredible performances when put in the spot and given the opportunity. So for him to just walk out the door like that, it seems crazy. It's a huge miss for Triple H and for the company to not re-sign him or utilize him at all. To read that he wasn't approached at all with anything is crazy to me. So hopefully he goes out there and absolutely crushes it wherever he decides to go. If he's, going to look for AEW, if he's going to try, New Japan, TNA, he would probably be an absolute beast there. If he went to TNA and just started tearing it up with some of those top guys, I think that could be a lot of fun. But really, anywhere he goes, the sky is the limit for him. He is in a great spot right now with his in-ring performance. At least the last time we saw him in NXT and on Raw, he was. And I can't imagine that that's just going to go away after a couple weeks. But it's just crazy to have him on the roster and not use him like that. So I think that's everything for WWE. Honestly, if I missed anything, if there were matches that stood out, anything like that, please comment, let me know. You can always email. I'll put the email address in the show notes, the description and everything. Let me know if there's anything on the WWE side that I missed or that you're really enjoying. I appreciate it. But we've got AEW Forbidden Door this Sunday coming at you from Long Island, New York. It is another typically stacked AEW card with 13 matches on the card, 3 pre-show matches. And typically with AEW, whether you're enjoying the actual stories or not, the in-ring product is going to be exceptional. And when you come to these pay-per-views, you're going to get your money's worth. They've kept the pay-per-views at like $50, I think, and they just stack these cards with as many things as possible, as many matches as possible. And the work rate is always pretty close to just exceptional. So this does not look like it's going to be anything different. It will probably be another marathon of just insane match after insane match. But, you know, it's better that way. So I will go in Wikipedia order here. It does start with the pre-show matches, and then I will just go down from there to the main event. And we'll see what we got. First up on the pre-show, we have Chris Statlander and Momo Watanabe with Stokely Hathaway versus Willow Nightingale and Tam Nakano. Now, I can't imagine that they're going to start this off with Chris Statlander losing right away. She just turned heel within the last month and has not really gotten a chance to dive into that a whole lot. She's, popped up and, slapped Orange Cassidy and, beat up Willow a couple times, but they haven't really, given her more to do than that so far. So I can't imagine that they're going to, really have the first time that her and Willow Nightingale wrestle be a loss for her. It would kind of, curtail the momentum. So I can imagine this is going to be a Statlander Watanabe win. But it's a great way to start the show if this is the first pre-show match, because Willow Nightingale is such a popular wrestler that it's sure to start the crowd. And, even if the crowd is not full, they're going to react big for her. So it's a good way to get the energy up right away. We'll go from that right into the second match on the pre-show, which is Mariah May versus Saraya in a qualifying match for the Women's Owen Hart Cup. This one's interesting. It's interesting to see this on the pre-show. It's been moved a couple times. I feel like I saw it advertised for Dynamite 3-4 weeks ago when they were at the Forum. It's weird that this keeps getting moved around and shuffled around. And I don't know if that's in the name of the story or if things were getting cut for time and moved around just on the back end. But here we are now. The match is happening. And I really don't know. I kind of think Mariah May is the one who's going to eventually dethrone Toni Storm. I think that kind of makes the most sense for that story. So the winners of these tournaments getting the all-in title shots is what makes me think this is going to be a Mariah May win, even though all-in taking place in London at Wembley Stadium. Saraya won last year, obviously. So there's always a chance that they're going to decide to go that route again, but it really kind of feels like everything is building towards Mariah May, Toni Storm at All In for the women's title. So I'm going to say Mariah May. And then last on the pre-show, we have Los Ingobernables de Japan versus the Lucha Brothers in a trios match. The Lucha Brothers and Mystico in a trios match. This one is probably going to be insane. Putting this on the pre-show is wild, because all of these guys are doing some pretty strong work right now. In particular, Rey Fenix, who just came back from injury and looks like an absolute superhero flying around out there every match he's had. So I kind of think I'm pulling for New Japan here. I think Los Ingobernables are probably going to take this for no reason other than you can't have them lose every match. New Japan is not going to agree to do this show and then have all of their guys lose. So first match on the main card, we have the 6-man ladder match for the vacant AEW TNT title, which will be Takeshita, Mark Briscoe, Jack Perry, Dante Martin, Leo Rush, and El Phantasmo. And I'm really torn between two people here that it could be. I think it could easily be Konosuke Takeshita, and I think it could be Jack Perry. And based on how everything else has gone with this Elite story so far, and all of them having gold, I'm really inclined to pick Jack Perry here. I think the more interesting choice would be Takeshita, but I think it's going to be Jack Perry for the Elite have all the gold storyline. I don't know how many people want it to be the storyline, but it kind of feels like that's where we're going. The whole tournament started because the Elite tried to give him the title. So him winning it anyways, running through the tournament and then winning the ladder match kind of makes the most sense. So I think it's going to be a Jack Perry win here, but I would love to see Takeshita get gold especially in this spot. I think he would be a great TNT champion. Next up, we have Timeless Toni Storm defending the AEW Women's World Championship versus Mina Shirakawa. This story has been consistently probably the best story on AEW programming. Mariah May is listed as being in the corner for both women. The story is very much, for her affection and her mentor versus her longtime tag team partner. I think Timeless Toni Storm will end up retaining. I'm really curious to see how the story is going to unfold. I cannot pretend to predict how it's going to happen, because this story has been just so weird and unique from the get-go. So I'm going to say Toni Storm retains, but no matter what happens, it is going to be one of the highlights of the card. Next up, we have a trios match between the Learning Tree, Chris Jericho and Big Bill, and Jeff Cobb, taking on Samoa Joe, Hook, and Shibata. And I think that this is probably a Samoa Joe, Hook, Shibata win, because that group is just cool. They're just cool, and they're just kicking ass right now. Maybe there's interference from Mark Sterling and those guys, Tony Nese, but I really don't think, every time I say I really don't think the Learning Tree needs the win or Chris Jericho needs the win, it's kind of besides the point. You're kind of like, does he need the win? No. Could he easily get the win? Absolutely. So, I'm going to say I think that this is a Samoa Joe, Hook, Shibata win, but I would not be surprised at all if the Learning Tree pulls this out somehow and this feud continues on, because that kind of just seems to be what happens with Chris Jericho. Is it, you think the feud has hit a point where it can conclude, and then surprise, there's 2 more months of matches and storylines coming out of it. So fingers crossed this is a Hook, Samoa Joe, Shibata win, and they could start focusing on the trios title, but that might just be wishful thinking. Next up, we have MJF versus Hechicero. MJF looked awesome in his first match back against Roosh. I think it's going to be a really interesting combination of styles. I think they're going to put on a very good match. I have not seen a lot of Hechicero. I will not lie and pretend that I have, so I'm not super familiar with him. I'm guessing being put in this type of prominent spot against one of their bigger stars in MJF, there's a lot of faith there, and there's a lot of anticipation that this match will deliver. So I'm very excited to see it, just to kind of get more familiar with him. And I think this is probably an MJF win, because they don't have him come back to lose 2 matches in when they're still kind of laying the cards out for what his storyline is going to be. He's kind of teased feuds with like 3 or 4 of the top guys. He had that weird stare down with Will Ospreay on Dynamite this last week, and he had the promo with Daniel Garcia where he said, "Let's wrestle it all in." I'm not too sure where they're going with MJF storyline wise, but I do think that this is going to be one of those matches where it's a one-off and he wins, but it's going to look incredible in the process. Speaking of looking incredible in the process, Zack Sabre Jr. versus Orange Cassidy in a singles match. These are 2 dudes who really respect each other outside of the ring, and I think that respect shows in all of the interactions that they have, and I think that this match is going to be a surprising one. I think Zack Sabre Jr. probably wins this. They are the potential match of the night. They are the potential steal the show match, if I had to guess, because just imagining the Zack Sabre Jr. Orange Cassidy dynamic is enough to predict how entertaining this match is going to be. I really have high hopes for it, and I really hope I'm not disappointed. Next up, we have Jon Moxley versus Naito for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. And this is one, I know Jon Moxley does not lose a lot, but I think Naito winning on such a big stage, winning the IWGP title, would be a good use of Moxley losing and a good use of putting more eyes on that title and kind of getting people more and more familiar if they're not. I know a lot of the AEW fan base already is, but Moxley is such a workhorse. It wouldn't surprise me if he retained it and then next week or 2 weeks later was just in Japan defending it more. But I think this is a good spot to do it, unless he's going to hold it until All In. and drop it at Wembley to someone else. I feel like this is a Naito win. So I'm going to say he pulls off the surprise, but it is Jon Moxley, so his losses are always so few and far between. Let's say Naito. Next up, we have the winner-takes-all match for the AEW TBS title and the New Japan Strong Women's Championship, Mercedes Moné versus Stephanie Vaquer. And this one is another one where it feels like it's too soon for Mercedes to lose, and the story that they're telling is Mercedes kind of seemingly righting the wrongs from this last year of being injured. The first match she had was beating Willow Nightingale, who injured her. Now she's wrestling for the Women's Strong Championship, which was the title that she lost to Willow because she was hurt. And there's a lot of things lining up here for this to be a crazy Mercedes Moné summer run into All In, where, you know, I don't think she's going to be at like the belt collector level Kenny Omega run, but I think she'll win this and be at least 2 belts, possibly even a third from New Japan or another promotion. Going into All In, I think this is going to be, you know, a really good chance to establish her as, you know, such a major figurehead in the women's division. Next up, we have the Elite taking on the Acclaimed and Tanahashi. I do not want to say the name that they have for them here on Wikipedia. It is Scissor Ace. Don't know why. I'm sure there's going to be shirts. I'm sure we'll see tons of shirts this Sunday. People wearing Scissor Ace shirts. And, you know, that's okay. There's 2 trios matches on this main card that I kind of don't understand why they aren't on the pre-show. Like, I would watch LIDJ versus the Lucha Bros and Mystico on the main card a lot more than I would watch the Learning Tree. As much as I love Samoa Joe and Hook and Shibata and their chemistry together, that could have been a pre-show match. This one is a little more okay, I understand, because it's the Elite. And the Acclaimed is such a big act for them. But if this really is like the second to last match, or the third match on, like, third to last match on the card, like, I'm gonna be shocked. So we'll see what this card layout looks like. But this feels like an Elite win. The Acclaimed got the win over them surprisingly last week to set up getting a title shot. Now you have this, and I think this feels like an Elite stand tall to end the segment, beat them down, and we go from there, them trying to weasel out of giving them the title shot and whatever else they're going to do. So I think that this is probably an Elite win, and it's honestly probably going to be more entertaining than I'm making it sound. All of these guys are super talented. It's not like they're not amazing in the ring. It just hasn't been the story for me with the Elite and how they've been doing everything. But that said, like, it's going to be a great match. I'll be shocked if it's the second to last match. Next up, we have men's Owen Hart Cup tournament first round match between Bryan Danielson and Shingo Takagi, which is going to be incredible. Those are 2 dudes that can absolutely put on clinics. I think it's going to be a great blend of styles. Bryan Danielson, one of the best wrestlers in the world right now, if not the best, depending on your style and your preference, basically. I think he's going to win. He's got a history of losing these giant matches, but they're really kind of starting to set up the Owen Hart Cup tournament to be like this last great Bryan Danielson run to the title. And he's so good at that type of story. And if this is his last little run up until retiring from being a full-time wrestler, I think it's very easy to imagine that he's going to have some incredible matches on the way there. And him, you know, competing for the title at All In, no matter who he's facing, would be a very smart decision. So I think this is a Danielson win. But I think this is going to be like a 20-minute clinic that these guys put on. And last, we have the singles match for the AEW World Championship, our main event. The champion, Swerve Strickland, defends against Will Ospreay. This has been a very well-booked feud. This has been a great story that they've been telling, where Swerve is essentially like, hey, you're too young, you're overloading it, you're overdoing it, you're spreading yourself too thin, And more importantly than that, you hesitate and I don't. And that is the difference. You take that second and I don't think twice, and that is it. And I think telling the story that way is very smart. They had that great tag match with Gates of Agony on Dynamite this last week where they had to team up. And they looked great as a team, to be honest. I really enjoyed watching them work together, but that ended with Swerve not even thinking twice, just taking out Will Ospreay, leaving him lying at the end of the show, which in traditional wrestling logic would make you think that that means Ospreay is 100% winning. But I think they've set up too many things that could be outside factors for him to win at this point. He's still the AEW International Champion. He just said on Wednesday at Dynamite that he'd be happy to defend that and the world title against Daniel Garcia this coming week on Dynamite. So he was already looking ahead. He's had the weird couple stare downs with MJF. He's got all the things going on with the Don Callis family. Basically, they're building in all of these possibilities of how he took his eye off the ball and how he lost. And it's a big deal because he has not lost in AEW. He has been undefeated his entire time in AEW and since he came over full-time at the start of this year. So his first loss is going to mean something. And his first loss coming to Swerve Strickland for the title and the headline of one of their big pay-per-views of the year is a huge, huge boost to Swerve's title reign. And not that I think he needs added legitimacy, but I think his reign so far could have been booked better. I think he's been a little underutilized, if anything, which is kind of surprising to say about the world champion, but this feud has really fixed that pretty instantly. They've had some intense promo battles. They have really sold the stakes of this story and escalated the stakes of this story. So I think this is going to be a Swerve Strickland win. I know Ospreay is incredibly hot right now. He's on an unbelievable run, and it's easy to picture him with the two titles high up over his head going into a huge high-profile match at All In Wembley Stadium, but I really think this is going to be a Swerve win. Whether it is clean or with interference, I don't really know. We'll, I guess, just wait and see how that goes. I would imagine someone's going to get involved, whether it's the Don Callis family or if it's MJF to set up something. I don't know, but I think there's going to be something like that here. But either way, it's going to be a huge boost for Swerve Strickland, and it's going to really push this title reign, I think, to another level where he kind of has to be the prominent, A-tier star on Dynamite and on AEW programming in general going forward. There we go. If you are seeing this before the show, please let me know. What are you excited to see? What match are you most looking forward to here? I think there's a lot of really strong ones. I think the ladder match is going to surprise a lot of people for the TNT title. You put guys like Leo Rush and Dante Martin, who are just so skilled. Mark Briscoe, who might just be out of his mind. The dude is crazy with the things that he does. I already said, too, the women's title match with Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa is probably going to be just an absolute great match on top of a good story unfolding. And then Orange Cassidy and Zack Sabre Jr. That's another one. And honestly, not to be the obvious one here, but the main event, I love Swerve and Will Ospreay. I'm sure that's going to be an incredible match because I love both of those guys, and they are at such a high level right now that I can't imagine them doing anything but... You can't steal the show when you're the main event, but I imagine they will live up to or supersede the hype, which might even be better than stealing the show at this point. I don't know. I believe that is everything I have for this week. So before I get out of here, every week we end the show running through some of the best matches of the week. So in case you missed any of these, please do yourself a favor and check them out before the pay-per-view, before the start of the next week, because there are some absolute gems right now. So here are the matches that you should absolutely watch this week. Thank you very much for watching. If you're new to the channel or listening to this for the first time, please subscribe, follow along, any of that. I will put the email address in the description, show notes, everywhere. So if you have anything you want to send in, anything you want to... So If there's anything you want to send in or mention, please fire away. Appreciate it all. Everybody enjoy Forbidden Door. Now we'll talk to everybody next week for Money in the Bank and NXT Heat Wave. On Monday Night Raw, we have Lyra Valkyria versus Shayna Baszler versus Kairi Sane in a triple threat match to qualify for the Women's Money in the Bank ladder match. We also, for Monday Night Raw, have Chad Gable versus Braun Strowman versus Bronson Reed in a triple threat match to qualify for the Men's Money in the Bank ladder match. Next up, we have Nathan Frazier versus Tony D'Angelo on NXT for the Heritage Cup. We have Jay White versus Rey Fenix in an Owen Hart tournament qualifying round match on Dynamite. We have Kyle O'Reilly versus Zack Sabre Jr. on AEW Dynamite. And we have a triple threat match between Santos Escobar, Logan Paul, and LA Knight as a qualifying match for the Men's Money in the Bank ladder match. So check any of those out if you have not seen them. Enjoy Forbidden Door. Thank you for watching.